It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for our lunch period, Representative Elizabeth Lear, to share with us a legislative updates and her thoughts on classical education. Representative Lear is in her second term in the Ohio House of Representatives. She represents the 61st Ohio House District and has worked as the Education Policy Analyst and Legislative Liaison for the Buckeye Institute, of which they're good friends of many folks in the room, and a private sector researcher specializing in education policy. She's active in the community. She served in the Ohio Air NationalGuard, including active duty in the Pentagon during Operation Desert Storm. Thank you very much. Including having served as well on the board of 4 charter schools, including 1 classical charter school. She had served on the Heart of Ohio Classical School, which I know there are representatives in the room from there. And finally, we're proud to say that Representative Lear is an alumna of the Ohio State University, having earned her bachelor's degree in international relations here. So Representative Lear, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Director. And I dressed for the occasion since it's OSU, right? I'm going to pull up some info on my computer really quickly, and then we'll get started. And this is just in case. I don't have any slides or anything like that for you. But I did want to tell you, it is truly an honor to speak to all of you at the Ohio Classical Schools Conference. So grateful that my friend and colleague, State Senator Brenner, could not be here, so I get to do it. He had to go out of state, but he did have a message for all of you, so let me attempt to quote him accurately. School choice is the future of education for all students. Individualized learning plans are the future, especially given the rise of AI. Eventually, 100% of the funding will follow the student to whatever school they want to attend. State government will not control that. Local government will not control that. Parents will. He will love to know that you clapped for his quote, so I'll make sure to tell him. So a little background about me. 15 years ago, Senator Brenner and I actually ran against one another for the Ohio House seat that was vacated by then State Representative Chris Jordan, who was running for Senate. It's probably no surprise to all of you that now Senator Brenner won that race. I came in third in a 6-way race, very close to him though, 2.5 points behind, and we became good friends. That's not usually what happens when you're running against someone, but it was a wonderful opportunity. I learned a lot, and apparently I decided I would try again because I'm here now. He, as you know, or may not, is the Senate Education Chair, and I'm a former education policy analyst with the Buckeye Institute, as Director Strang told you. While there, I focused solely on school choice issues, doing research on charter schools and other school choice ideas, including talking to parents, doing some surveys and things to find out why are you looking for alternatives. I most recently served when I was a board member on the Heart of Ohio Classical Academy. I had to step off because I won my election in fall of 2022. And I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that our school over in the Dublin area has gotten off the ground and we've got kids there. And I know they're doing a great job because I know the curriculum foundation that you all have provided. So congratulations to all of you. So I thought we'd start with funding. Ohio's current budget spends around 27% of its GRF, its General Revenue Fund, on primary and secondary education. More than $11 billion was appropriated for foundation funding, both for 2026 and for 2027. And that's for traditional district schools, for charter schools, which we call community and STEM schools, for joint vocational schools, and for voucher students. But this amount does not include the local property taxes, which provide an additional $14.2 billion as recently as 2023. So it's more now, substantially. The dollars fund a little over 1.6 million students, and that's a decline of roughly 10% over the last decade. A little history. I was an aide in the Ohio House a few years ago, and I was there in 1997 when a lot of these major changes began to happen. It was a banner year for education reform in Ohio. The Cleveland Voucher Program started that year, which has expanded to include multiple types of vouchers throughout the state, including the Cleveland Voucher, Special Needs Voucher, Autism Scholarship, and of course, Ed Choice, which was originally for low-performing districts. That same year, our first community school program began as a pilot in the budget. And community schools, you're probably not used to that term unless you've been around Ohio for a while. It was chosen intentionally to be a little tricky because legislators didn't think we would be able to open charter schools in Ohio because the teachers' unions were very much opposed. So we didn't call them charter schools. We called them community schools, and we got it through in the budget, and we've been going strong ever since. Right now, we have about 117,000 students that are being served in those community schools. And if any of my community school friends have an updated number on that, you're welcome to share that during Q&A. Coming closer to today, our budget from 2 years ago, 2023, was heralded as providing universal school choice through the expansion of our education voucher program to all students. While it does allow any student whose parents want to send them to a private school to access these funds, it is based on a sliding scale, so the more money you have, the less of a voucher you get. As a result, a number of students are using these vouchers. We have exploded, in fact, in the number of students using these vouchers. In 2023, it was 82,991. And yes, Chad Aldis, I'm using some forthe facts, just so you know. And we have nearly doubled that to 162,000 plus students who are now enrolled in the voucher program. As you would expect, home education has also grown, especially since COVID, from about 33,000 in 2020 to over 53,000 students today. Also included in last session's budget, we finally updated our reading curriculum to the science of reading from the failed whole language method as literacy rates continued to stagnate. We had only 32% of our fourth graders scoring proficient on the NAEP, 31% of eighth graders. One only needs to visit the Northeast Ohio Classical Academy website. Do I have any of those folks in the room? Northeast Ohio? Great. To see the difference with their wonderful graphs, the red and blue bar graphs that they created, the classical method of reading is clearly showing results, great improvements in test scores for their kids, for our kids. So thank you all for what you're doing there. State Senator Brenner, Representative Fowler Arthur, who is the chair of the House Education Committee, and I all had multiple amendments to our budget this year. And our goal was to try to improve the situation for our charter schools. A few of them did make it through the final budget. We defined a classical school in our budget. We allowed classical schools to test with paper and pencil. And we had several additional items that involved changes for sponsors and contracts and quality. The rest of this session, since the budget ended the end of June, we expect to focus on a major state assessment change, I'm happy to talk about that if you want to ask me during Q&A in like 2 minutes. Senator Brenner has been looking for a better math program, like he did with the science of reading. We would like to find some suggestions for math that are going to help students improve there, because our NAEP scores in math are also abysmal. And we're grappling with the continued pushback from district schools over transportation for our students. Those of you who work in the industry know exactly what I'm talking about. My personal goal is to also work towards a pilot or a broader plan to encourage our traditional districts to embrace classical education and see if maybe they would open up an elementary or 2 or 20 to the classical method and give parents in the district schools the opportunity that a lot of our charter kids and some of our private school kids are taking. We may also attempt to override the veto from the governor on ESAs. There was language included in the budget for non-chartered, non-public schools who do not want to take advantage of the voucher program because of the potential strings attached. So I'm hearing from the Senate that that may be something that they take up in the fall if the House takes it up. So I am now happy to take some questions if you have any. I'll do my best to answer, but if not, I have it on good authority that our friend Heather Moore is happy to correspond with me. Anything I can't answer today that I need to research, I will get to you through her. And thank you for the opportunity to share the legislative update.
Hi, thank you. I'm from Heart of Ohio Classical Academy, and we've had tremendous problems with transportation in this past year. And the thought had come to my mind, and how feasible do you think this would be? Probably a long-term proposition, but maybe not. If somehow the transportation, it seems to me that they're all run by the districts. If in a community or a county, that could be lifted out, and the whole transportation system would become its own entity that runs on its own. And so we're not subservient to whatever the school districts want, but that would be serving all kids. So what do you think of that idea?
Michelle Coldiron, thank you for your question. This is something that Senator Brenner and I and other folks who have been involved in the education realm legislatively have been talking about for several years. And we would welcome input on how to make this work practically speaking. Could we use counties as a transportation hub for the schools? So one of the issues that my districts have is there are some federal laws that we may want to consider that require, for instance, the city of Delaware to transport kids who have found themselves homeless through no fault of their own, but they're now down in southern Franklin County. They are required to go all the way down there and pick those children up and take them back up to Delaware. So they have substantial issues as well. If we could do county-wide transportation instead, and we could work with the federal government to provide reasonable accommodations for students so that we're not transporting them 1 or 2 or 3 hours away from where they live, I think that would be a great change, especially for our charter and our Ed Choice kids, because a lot of the district schools, especially Columbus, are really oppositional to getting our kids to their schools, and their education is suffering, and it's hard on their parents. So we're talking about it, but we don't have anything in writing yet. So any suggestions that you have that might help us make that work, Buckeye Institute, Fordham, and others, we welcome you guys at the table because we want to put together something that's actually going to work for all kids. Thanks for the question.
Hi, so you graciously mentioned state testing. Can you embellish?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I would love to, actually. So Chair Fowler Arthur from the House Education Committee and I have been working really for several years before either of us were in the House on pushing to a different sort of testing system, one that the state isn't creating with a contractor that's proprietary and criterion referenced. What all of you use in your schools to measure where your students' growth comes from are norm reference tests. We have a bunch of norm reference tests that have been used historically, Iowa Test of Basic Skills, California Achievement Test, others like that. So what we're going to be doing is introducing a bill just to whet people's appetite for it, because doing a wholesale change immediately is often difficult in the legislature. I'm sure you're not surprised. So we're looking at K through 2 and moving those assessments to norm reference system. And we're going to be talking also with the federal government, who's trying to relax a lot of those rules. But the goal is to make it K through 12, so that we can move from the current testing system where our teachers are forced to spend way too much time teaching to the test in the classroom, and instead allow them just to provide a mechanism that is tried and true, where we can actually measure growth, and it's not going to take the kids 2 or 3 weeks or more to prepare for them. They'll just go in, they'll take it, and the school will have real measurable results. That's our plan, and we're going to start K through 2.
Hi, thank you for all the work you're doing for classical schools. I'm on the school board of Northwest Classical Academy, and we're really excited that you codified what a classical school is and that we'll get to use paper tests. So thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about how you'll assess schools? How will you change the rating systems?
That's a great question. We have actually not discussed changing the rating system this General Assembly. That doesn't mean somebody won't try. But I know there have been multiple changes over the last 6 years. So there's nothing in the works of which I am aware, unless one of the outside organizations is doing something with maybe Senator Brenner or others. But we're always open to improvement, so please feel free to share any ideas that you have with Senator Brenner, Representative Fowler Arthur, or me, and we can work on it if we need to. If we don't need to, we'll try to leave it alone.
I have a loud voice, but it's even louder with the microphone. Thank you, Representative, and obviously we've worked together. I'm with the Buckeye Institute, but also Heart of Ohio Classical Academy, so served with you on a board for a while. Sorry to see you leave the board, but glad to see you assume the role that you have there. And we've talked a lot about transportation. I echo my fellow board member, Michelle, on that. But one thing I think that's an interesting thing is we're trying to get to the money following the student. This is kind of that talking. You mentioned that, it's so hard to do because of the complexity with the property taxes, although maybe we're going to abolish them here in Ohio. We'll see how that goes. There's a constitutional amendment that's going on around that, so we shall see. But absent something quite, that draconian happening, do you see there being an appetite amongst your caucuses, or at least the caucuses currently constructed in the House, to do anything that shifts us even more broadly to that? I know we had the new ESA program, but something that's just broader based in that space that moves us there. I know there's the backpack bill that keeps coming up, but it gets stymied because, and it is hard, it's complicated, again, property tax interplay with the state spending. So just your sense of, will we be able to build out a caucus that will be able to be supportive of us moving down that direction in the near term, or at least near to medium term?
Well, let me ask the director if we're allowed to talk politics, because that's what's going to be required for this answer. I love that. I love that. Okay. Probably not in this current environment, which Superintendent Kraft is not going to mention to any of his bosses. No, but seriously, I know Governor DeWine has been very proactive on education change. He wants to see education work, but he's not super open to that idea. And so we have a lot of caucus members also who are not really there to the 100% money following the student yet. Some are. And I truly think that depending on who the governor is in 2027, we may see a substantive shift. And if that's the case, Senator Brenner, who has not officially announced this yet, but said he was going to this week, and I'm allowed to talk about it, he intends to run for the Ohio House because he's term limited, and he is working on a program. He's already introduced a bill that would change the entire system to be roughly equal parts sales, property, and income tax, and then that money would follow the student. And of course, we're going to want input from our wonderful friends at the department. So that's an option moving forward. I don't see it realistically being considered this GA, but under a possible Governor Ramaswamy, it could be. And if Andy ends up back in the House, that would help push that along. So I hope that sort of answers your question, but I know it's about as clear as mud.
Hi, Chad Aldis from the Fordham Institute. Building off of Greg's question related to funding, but maybe something more specifically charter related, and that is the governor, since his very first budget, for 4 budgets now, has championed a program that no one else in the country does, or just about no one, related to if you are deemed a high-quality charter school, you get up to an additional $3,000 per pupil. But doing legislative advocacy myself, I can tell you there are very few champions for that and for that framework in the House and Senate. Most have thought, well, why aren't we funding all charter schools fairly? So rather than having a pot of funds for just some schools, which currently are only around 30% of charter schools get those dollars. So is that a specific area where you could see the General Assembly focusing on in the future, of maybe shifting the high quality dollars to like having a beefed up charter equity supplement? So instead of $500 a pupil, it might be $2,500 a pupil or $3,000, so that everyone gets it, and then of course has the accountability that charter schools have baked in?
I would love to discuss that a little further. I mean, we had probably a dozen really great amendments for charter schools in the budget and ended up with a handful, still good, but the ones that were dealing with funding are the ones that got cut and left on the floor after they went through it with a scalpel or a hatchet, depending on your view. So I think there is more that we need to do. I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with rewarding those that are doing really well, but we also need to help shore up those that are providing an alternative for our kids, especially in the inner cities. And what I've learned from my time at Buckeye is the overwhelming majority of parents do not choose charters because they're looking for great academics. We want that, but most of the inner city parents are looking for a safe environment for their kids. So can we help all of these schools that are at least succeeding at a level better than the district school? That would be my goal. So I absolutely would love to work together to provide some additional funding resources, because the charter community deserves it, and the work that you're doing with our most difficult kids is well worth the reward.
Thank you so much for your work, Charlotte Elton from Heritage Christian in Canton. And we are a chartered non-public in a city center, similar to what you've described. And so truly appreciate all of the school choice work that you've done. It makes a really big difference. Just a couple of things kind of scattered. I'm sure you don't have enough on your plate. So just if you want to look at a couple of other things, I do think the disadvantaged pupil funding, that being able to also follow the student, of course, would be critical. One thing to consider, education service centers, as far as I'm aware, are publicly funded entities. I know that in some counties, they're more welcoming to some charter schools, non-public schools, et cetera. In some counties, like the one I'm in, it's just very exclusive. You cannot be a member, and it's a challenge because they do have resources for students, but unfortunately, it's just an exclusive club. So I think maybe encouraging some outreach. It would be great if some of the very cool things that they do and have could be open to students attending other school choice facilities if they are an education service center for education for all students in their community. The other piece is obviously with federal funding, and I know that that's been, very interesting this season. With federal funding being processed by our local public district creates some challenges. Obviously, it's in the law that a public entity needs to be the facilitator for those funds, and that's fine. That's great. If we could have some choice around that, because there are districts who do a fantastic job of knowing the rules, following the rules, and working with their non-pubs. And there are some districts where honestly it's just a capacity problem. It's a hat amongst many hats. And so they don't quite know how to do it, or they don't care to do it, or it's just frustrating. And so if non-public schools could choose, say we do, maybe we work with, Toledo Public Schools. Maybe we work with Summit County ESC. Maybe we work with one of those public entities versus being forced to work with our local district school, regardless of quality provided. That could be a great enhancement to our experience with federal funds. I guess that wasn't a question. Maybe that's wrong. So forgive me for that.
I think there's a question in there. Actually, I'm going to kind of punt this just a little bit to our wonderful Superintendent Kraft, not asking you to respond unless you wish, but that almost sounds like a question that maybe the state could funnel those dollars to make sure that they're being funneled correctly and to everybody who is eligible for them. But I'm open to a conversation that's much longer than this knee-jerk reaction that I'm having. But I understand your point, because it all depends on which district has the dollars, just like which district has the buses, right?
Yeah, the funding piece is actually running through Steve Dakin and the DEW piece, so that's not something that is under our current bailiwick with the in my role as the state superintendent. I don't really have a question, more of a comment for the representative. The legislature on the last two sessions has done an amazing job of opening up more pathways for us to license educators. That's especially true of career tech education this last session. We have more ways of getting good qualified people in front of our career tech students, and more opportunities for our districts to offer career tech than we've ever had in the state of Ohio. We're still struggling finding those teachers, and we're working it every day. But more broadly, you've got a group there at the state board and in the state superintendent that is incredibly supportive of choice for our families and for giving you as much flexibility for staffing your schools. So right now, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have the wrong felony conviction, but has a degree that we can't get at least alternative license to get them in front of kids, at least initially. And then there'll be some hoops that are still in the revised code and the rules, but we're using as much flexibility as we can. So I just want to throw out to you, if any of you are having trouble getting somebody over the bar from a licensure perspective, reach out directly to me. Just go to the website, find superintendent, click on that, and I'll get one of our experts to get together with you, and we'll figure out a pathway. And I'll be shocked if we can't do that. But I sure appreciate the legislature for the work they've done on giving us more flexibility around that. Thank you.
I love that advertisement from Superintendent Kraft, and I just want you all to know that he was stolen from Delaware County to go and be the superintendent for the state, and we couldn't have a better representative there with his open-mindedness towards what is best for kids. That's what he wants. So we've got some great people on staff at the governor's level right now to help work with your kids and my kids, my grandkids actually, so. Great. I think, Director Strang, that we are finished with me. So whatever you want to do next, it's all yours.